So, welcome to the MMG podcast. Today we are joined by Anthony. How are you doing, mate? You right?
I'm doing all right, thanks.
Good stuff. The best way I find to start these things is for you to let us know who you are and what you do. So, if you want to tell us a bit about what you do, that would be amazing.
Well, I've been doing broadcast television production for about 20 years. I did a cooking series for PBS and cable TV in the US for 15 years. And that was multi camera, live switched, but to tape. So basically, live streaming to me is just changing the destination at the very end. All the multi camera live switching and titles and all of that is exactly the same. Although I will admit that the technology has gotten a lot more advanced, and now you can put in your pocket what used to be a table full of gear.
Which is amazing, right? Like, I see that as a win.
Yes, it is a win until something doesn't work, and then of course that one problem takes the entire thing down, which is like whereas before, if the audio op needed to fix something, he would be off fixing something with audio and tweaking something, but now it's on that same device.
Got ya. Yeah. No, I see. I still believe in like having boxes around things so that they sit in different places for that reason and redundancy. But then
Exactly,
that's
exactly.
more like sort of a larger scale production, isn't it? From that sort of perspective. Um, One of the things that obviously we met previously for was the live streams that you do with Bird Dog as well.
Yep, yep.
Um, so that studio space that you've got there, maybe talk through the setup a little bit because I'm imagining that does feature NDI, right?
Well, it's actually the second studio space that I've built. I mean, I've worked at many different studios through the years. Back when we were doing the cooking show, I was based in Philadelphia. I worked in a studio there. NDI was not a figment of anybody's imagination. It was all standard def. Then it was all high definition. 4K wasn't, part of the thing. Now you fast forward to I'm in Texas and everything, and I live in a town, and I was getting hired for freelance work, but there wasn't a studio space in the town that I was in. You'd have to drive 40 minutes to get into Dallas or something like that. So I says, well, we need a studio space here in town. So I partnered up with a local magazine, and because they were purchasing a building, and I says, well, listen, if you're gonna, make the this one big room part of photography space, maybe we can work together. I can chip in some money, and we could make it video. So we did that, and we blocked it out, we soundproofed it, put in a cyc wall, I installed a new tech TriCaster. We had 4 cameras, and we did some production in the studio. I also rented it out to other people who just wanted to bring in their own cameras and stuff. So it was a rentable space, but it was also a live production space and everything. And it was funny, like at the time we had a table full of gear. We went into, like, there was a room adjacent to it, and there was this long table on there. And the guy who, was buying the building, he was like, well, how much of this table do you think you need? And I was like, well, all of it. That's a dumb question. Because it's like, well, I got the monitors and the TriCaster and the control surfaces and the audio mixer and the lighting board and the wireless receivers, and then you just go down a list,
Keeps going.
and anybody who's been on a production, you go to front of house, and it is just tables and tables and tables full of gear, and rightly so, because every gig needs a different solution. And so the wireless mics you use on one thing is not the audio solution for something else, and the cameras you use for one gig might all be SDI, and the cameras you use on another gig could be HDMI or NDI or things like that. And that was the space that I had built. And then I also said not everybody needs that, and I started doing some of my own content, finally, which is interesting. It's a slight diversion that I've been writing for Streaming Media Magazine for over 15 years, but only recently started making my own production content for YouTube about a year and a half ago. I
Hmm.
mean, I could have been making it for 15 years, but I just started a year and a half ago. And to do that, I created a small space in my home where I, soundproofed a room, and I set up, a green screen and a big flat panel light and backlight, and lights just for the backdrop and everything. and I've got a space where I've got switchers in front of me and a program monitor and a prompter and everything. And it's actually set up well enough that I've had people rent this space out where they just needed the CEO needs to like appear at another event somewhere else and doesn't want to go there. He
Hmm.
comes here and we hook him in, and we're off to the races.
When you set that up, was it something that you did in stages then, or did you have a plan for like how it was, or did it start off as like a little mic, a little camera, and then sort of build? Or
It actually came in stages, because I was creating content for a previous channel called AIBA Tech Thoughts. I have this wall of gear with lenses and cameras and all different awards and everything that I've used over through the years. So that was my very technical backdrop, and I've used that for a few years. To the point where somebody says, "Well, that's a really cool green screen," and then I would reach behind me and take something off the shelf. Not a green screen. This is all real.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I had a little table in front of me because I wasn't really demoing gear. I was like, it was more about, just presenting. And then when I started demoing gear, I had to swap the little table out for a much larger table so I could put stuff on it and actually do a switch. And then when other clients came, well, they don't want my background. We just want a green screen and stuff like that. So then I made it so it could rotate. So it's like my one set is this way, and then if you rotate 90 degrees, the other set is that way. So I just rotate it back and forth, and everything's on wheels. The table is on wheels. The stand with the camera and the light is on wheels, and it's designed so it could rotate. And then, one day I was just like, oh man, I got to rotate it back. This is such a pain in the butt. And I said, wait a minute, I have a green screen. So I took a picture of the AIBA background, and then I used it on the green screen side.
That's
And I
cool.
haven't rotated it back since.
No, I can imagine, mate. We used to like in this pod studio that I'm in now, like it was all about physically how it looked, like the lighting, the way it was at the back, everything. Yeah, and we've stepped away from that, and now a little bit of green screen. It just seems to be a clean, tidy way of doing it. I think also the cameras that we use now, like so obviously like Bird Dog X5s, the Atmos AI cameras, like they tend to work really well for that as well because they are so much better now. So like actually getting the chroma and the keying and everything else, yeah, it just works easier, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, cameras today are just so snappy. And, I've gone through a couple cameras, my main camera, but then when Sony came out with the ZV-1, which is this little selfie podcasting vlog camera, but it has this really cool feature that they call product mode or product showcase or something like that, where you can hold something up and it racks focus to that super fast. And then when you put
Hmm.
your hand down, it's back on your face super fast. And for the videos that I do now, which are showing off product, and I constantly have to show something to the viewer closely, and I can hold it like within inches of the camera, and it's right on it, and then it's right back at me. I mean, that's like the perfect camera for that particular purpose. It's
Hmm.
like people always ask me, well, what's the best camera? This camera is perfect for this purpose. I would
That's it,
not
right?
use this in a conference. I would not use this for sports. I would not use.
Yeah, no, no, no. In a conference, that'd be going mad, wouldn't it? But for that, that's spot on.
Yeah, but and also stuck behind a prompter screen where it doesn't have to pan or tilt or do anything. It's like, it just stays at this focal length. Sometimes I'll zoom it in a little bit more, depending upon the shot that I want. And that's the shot it has through the glass of the prompter out to me. It doesn't ever change.
Have you seen like any other kit lately? Because obviously, I'm guessing you pop along to different expos and things. Actually, probably for context, it'd be useful for other people to know like where you're based.
I'm based in the Dallas area of the United States, Dallas, Texas, United States. But I've been to NAB, I've been to IBC, and I've produced a bunch of content at NAB for the Stream Tech channel. So people can go check that out. It's Stream Tech on YouTube. And shameless plug.
That's all right. That's
And
what I do as well, mate.
there's the amount of gear out there that's available is just amazing. Like, I remember when Mevo came out with the little start cameras that were battery operated, super convenient, and had NDI built in, and you could set up three of these and a Wi-Fi hotspot and go to town. and people kept saying this is the greatest thing, this is the greatest thing. And they've evolved that into their core line, which is an interchangeable lens camera that at about 3 times the price. And I always felt like there's this gap in the middle for like a Mevo Start Pro. And then of course Bird Dog just came out with their Makai,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the little one, but it's got an optical zoom, which is something that everybody always wanted in the Mevo Start. So here it is. Bird Dog creates the small battery operated camera, but with an small optical zoom. And it's still, you package 3 of these in a little case, you set them up, Wi-Fi, and you're done. And that's one of the magic of today's technology, is that you can leverage like average, ordinary, Wi-Fi for small portable studio setups. Now, I wouldn't use it for a big, full-on conference. I'd still love to have
Yeah.
everything on a wire. But for small podcasters and people creating content on the fly, I think that type of solution really does offer a lot of opportunity.
See, this is where we're coming from now in terms of the production world as well. So we're using that on like network based. So we've still got a cable, like it's still joined together. But all of the audio and video signals are all going through network. So everything you see in the room, like the screens, it's all coming from NDI and then like decoded, pumped to the screens. And then also all the audio is running over Dante. So it's really heavily network driven. But it's leading to the same thing, right? In that you said you sort of looked at that desk originally and were like, yeah, I need all of it. But now, like we don't. We go in and actually one desk is perfectly fine for a standard corporate gig,
Oh yeah.
which is sort of where we get excited. But also we're starting to think about the idea, and this would be interesting, like, what if we rethink the way that production's done? So, because I think you sort of sit a little bit more, maybe in the broadcast world, like in terms of the streaming and producing the sort of content side. But it's coming to a point now where all this tech has like expanded for those reasons, and also from the production side. And we've got so many options, but no one's really stepping and doing the big change, which is to turn around and go, right, we don't need to use a switcher. We don't need that pulse. We don't need this there for switching 4 channels. We can do that with software. We can do that with encodes, decodes. Like, yeah, what's your vision? What would you sort of think of, like, in terms of future setups? Are they going to get so small, like a phone, and then need to get bigger, or are they going to, like, where's
I,
the?
I think there's a size limitation just in terms of practicality,
Mhm.
because a human still needs to operate things. And I think one of the key demonstrations of this is that I was working with a company called YOLO Live, and they
Mhm.
make this little YOLO box. It's an all-in-one video switcher in an Android tablet, but with hardware inputs. The iPad is great, not knocking the iPad, and I used Switcher Studio on the iPad with network video over Wi-Fi for years. I used that for years. But the problem is people want to bring in their DSLR. People want to bring in their long lens camcorder. People want to bring in a PTZ camera.
Mhm.
And all of these really useful tools can't be brought into an iPad easily. And especially not at the time when the iPad was lightning based. And that just wasn't possible over lightning, just because it was a really limited, connectivity
Yeah, yeah.
protocol. And now that they have USB-C, and they've adopted the USB 3.0 standard, now you can actually bring in 4 UVC inputs. Okay, great, finally. But YOLO made this thing, and they've got these YOLO boxes. Well, they had this like 7-inch tablet that has 2 inputs, and it works really well. And it's the YOLO Box Pro. But then they've just, this past year come out with the YOLO Box Extreme with an 11-inch screen. And working on the larger screen and having more space to see more comments and line up more of your sources, going back to the small screen, it just feels so limiting. We as operators, there is a need to have that ability to see and act on multiple things. I need
Mhm.
to see all my video inputs. I need to see what audio is doing. If there's comments, somebody needs to see those all on a screen to be able to manage them. So you're already talking 3 screens, and you haven't even gotten into if you need to manage things in the cloud. Then you need a screen managing the cloud,
Yeah, yeah,
infrastructure
yeah.
as well. So these screens add up, and then you need a control surface or a keyboard to manage each of these things. So, while things can get smaller, the ability to put your fingers on an audio issue immediately means that it needs its own stuff. The ability to, adjust, and punch cameras means that it needs to have its own stuff. And, you can get smaller, but then it's all sitting on one screen in front of one person and nobody else can really affect it.
Hmm.
So that becomes its own challenge. The technology is there to super shrink things into a tiny little computer
Yeah,
with
yeah,
a
yeah.
little separated screen. Yeah, you could do that, but then that has its own caveats.
This is like vmix actually. So like when we've worked with it quite a lot and built quite a lot of different things, right? But you have to be careful because you can build a system that one person can't operate.
Oh
So
yeah,
like,
easily.
uh, then you need to split it out, and you're right, like then it turns into more monitors and other little bits. Like we quite like using sort of Akai MIDI buttons. They work really well. Stream decks, obviously,
Yeah.
they're really good, aren't they? Really good. But you're right,
And
like the user experience is important. Like you can't do everything from the small tiny screen, so it kind of makes
I mean,
sense.
another example during COVID, we were doing, I was working at a studio and I built out these vMix systems. And we would bring a host or a couple hosts into the studio to run this big conference. But all of the guests that were coming in from remote. So we would have panel event after panel event after panel event, and we would go for like 2 hours. And each panel would be about 10, 15 minutes. So I'm on one vMix system and I already got here's my setup page, here's my program monitor and things like that. And then I would actually create a second monitor just for callers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I created a stream deck just for callers. And I handed that off to a second producer so that as I'm switching one show with 4 people in the panel, he's onboarding the next 4. He's able to like punch a button and talk to only caller 5. Hey, caller, can you tip your camera down? Hey, can you close that window behind you? Okay, yeah, okay, good. Thank you very much. And he's able to onboard those people while same computer, same same computer, same, one program of vmix, but we've actually split the tasks on 2 different screens and 2 different control surfaces so that, I can't onboard at the same time as I'm paying attention to the dialogue and switching the live show. So I
Hmm.
have to offset that. Another option would be to have A and B machines. You were on A machine, we're on B machine, and you do the onboarding on the second machine. But we just chose to do it this way just because each panel event was small enough.
Yeah, so it's manageable. I mean, we do similar. Like sometimes with clients, we'll have a separate room, so we'll be in the venue but separate room, and then sort of bonded over cable, um, doing that. Or what we quite like as well is doing all of that stuff remotely, and then just piping it in, so that the person in the venue has got all of that control as to who's going where, like the routing, basically that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of this, like I don't know if you've seen or not, but we've got a product which we're just softly launching, I would say, at the moment. It's about to sort of like escalate a little bit more, but it's the Axis. And the idea is that's what it does, right? It allows convergence of all different signals. So like NDI, SDI, Dante, that kind of thing. And then we've left it open so that you can put a TriCaster on it or a vMix on it as well. Um, which at the moment is sort of one of the few products that does that, and we're yet to see what people do with it. Like we've got quite a vision to go with it,
Mhm.
but I'd like to see, like where it goes. But obviously, can't really fast forward, so we just have to see, won't we? But people can check that out. I'll do a little plug as well, actually. So that's just mmgaxis.io if they want to have a little peek. And we're just gearing up at the minute. We're just gearing up. So we're telling people it exists, getting kind of feedback on it. You can do pre-sale, but essentially there's another about 4-5 weeks to go yet before it's like a full-on launch. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, the series that we're doing this podcast on is AV over IP, right? Now, a lot of other people we've spoken to, that sort of crosses into the idea of deploying networks and different things. But I think for you, and in terms of what you do and what you bring to that is embracing it to make your job easier, and to sort of use new technology. Like, it just inherently kind of is video over IP, isn't it? Like when you talk about the YOLOs and like NDI with vMix and things like that. Um, have you got any like ideas or vision? Because a lot happened like with COVID. That was 5 years ago, right? So what might happen? So 5 years from now, what do you think might happen? Where do you think we might be in terms of like video production with networks?
I think, the AV over IP really does offer functionality and flexibility. I think that is something that, you know, people on the ground who have had to deal with, you know, baseband switching router systems. It used to be like if you had a production truck, you would have a 128 by 128 routing switcher so that all your SDIs coming in could be routed to wherever they needed to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And by putting, AV over IP, and primarily I'm talking about NDI because of its affordability. And especially with NDI HX3, you're not going to really, jump and blow past, a gigabit switch, but, there are more powerful switches that are becoming more and more affordable. I think SMPTE 2110 is still at the bleeding edge. It just, finally came out with a standard, I think last year,
Mm.
and Blackmagic jumped on board, but there's still interoperability issues and things like that at this time, when we're making this, when we're having this conversation. Whereas NDI has literally been out for 10 years. It's on version 6 point something of the software. It's been revised and honed and added to and modified, and now there's NDI audio, and there's, it's really strengthened its base, and now they have certification, which really helps in terms of like products coming out. Anybody can say, oh, we do NDI. Yeah, but are you certified?
Hmm.
Do you do it the proper way, and the packets are delivered in the proper order, and they have the headers and everything that works all the way across the board? So that, having that certification process available makes it easier for users to sit there and say, okay, I can, have, 5 PTZ cameras in 3 conference rooms, just run Ethernet and have it all come into here. And then I can have it available on any screen, projector, recorder, and, switcher that I want, because they all share this networking capability. And it doesn't require specialized AV hardware. Although, even having said that, we all know that Netgear has specialized AV networking hardware,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
that is designed to handle the harder requirements. Like, for the small podcaster, a good AV, single gigabit switch is going to do fine. For those people who are moving massive amounts of 4K video between multiple conference rooms, and they're going to do it for days, and it needs to be super reliable and everything, you're going to require another level. It's just like any piece of gear. There's small cameras for the vlogger, and then there's professional cameras for the sports photographer who needs it
Yeah,
to work
yeah, yeah,
every
yeah.
single day. There's different levels of gear for different levels of project.
Totally, totally. Um, I think that's a journey that we're going to be going on soon. Actually, is the NDI certification. So we'll have Dr. NDI Roberto checking over our axis and seeing what he thinks about all these things. So we'll sort of report back on that as well. But I suppose the other thing that we tend to touch on with these podcasts as well is just to explore a little bit about the person, as terms of like your background, right? So it's about where you came from, which you've obviously said before, like in terms of starting with the smaller sort of what do you say, the media articles. What was that? Who was that for?
I write for Streaming Media Magazine.
Okay.
It used to be Event TV, then it was rolled into Streaming Media. And I've been writing for them for many years. And I've written articles that are both very positive about gear and also not as positive about gear. And I've had an editor who has stood by me through the years, so I appreciate him. And the nice thing is, the Streaming Media is, one of the publications that The editorial department is separate from the marketing and advertising department. So what editorial does is completely separate. They can review,
Mhm.
they can have positive and negative, and
But that's good,
the
right? Like you need that, I
the
think.
budget, the people who are handling the budget and the advertising, while there are um, ads that are sponsored that go in the magazine, the other content is completely independent. And to the point where when I was working with YOLO Live, I was banned from doing a single article about YOLO Live for streaming media. So
Bit of a
there is
conflict, I suppose.
there's a conflict of interest, and they were very clear about that. It's like, as long as you have this business relationship with this company, you can't, you know, say anything about the company in the magazine, and that is, how it is. But I've got a long history in, like I said, broadcast, multicam, live switch production. Starting back in standard definition days. So I've been doing this a little while.
um, in terms of where you're heading, obviously you sort of going to keep doing the streaming and things. Have you got any bits that you want to plug for that? Like, have you got your YouTube? You've got a channel, right? Like that people can go.
Yeah, I started this YouTube channel called Stream Tech, and it's basically for people who are getting into live streaming and are interested in the more basic tools. We're
Mhm.
not talking like Olympics or anything like that. That's actually several orders of magnitude larger. But for people who are looking to set up a small little podcast, studio, looking to do their own little content creation and things like that, that's the type of content, the gear that I cover. And then I also do a whole series of articles that are just general information, like what is SDI, what is HDMI, what is NDI, how do they compare, what are the advantages of the different things,
Mhm.
what is a wide area network versus a local area network, what does bonding mean versus balanced WAN, a WAN balancer, and things like that. So those things are going to be a whole lot of new terms and new technologies that somebody coming into this is going to have to like really start to have to understand really quickly to be
Mhm.
able to produce content and do live streams. And so I produce content on the Stream Tech channel to help people get up to speed. So, and the best thing is on YouTube, you can like search for, wide area network or NDI, and all the videos on NDI will just pop up, and they can just start watching.
That's cool. That is really cool. I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do, and having spoke to other people, it's sort of like citing different things. So we've said like about the Netgear Academy, NDI basics, and things. But that's actually really fun. Because obviously they can come to you and actually have a look and learn about this stuff, which is really good, man. Really good. So the final question, actually, because it's the only thing that haven't touched on, and I have asked everyone else, right? The idea is that perhaps we might just help one person, or maybe it might be more, right? But what's your advice for someone that's looking to get into the industry? So within the tech arena, um, like where would you say is a good place to start?
Two places to start is you can start just with a cell phone and start to create content. There's, like I said, there's actually free apps. And if you go to the Stream Tech channel, I cover a free app that used to be made by Teradek called AirMix.
Mhm.
And you can get old hardware, old iPhones, old tablets, and start switching. And you learn by doing. And then when you hit something you don't know, go to YouTube University and start just Googling, like, what is about this? Why does my Wi-Fi suck? Oh, you need better than don't use the Wi-Fi that's in the iPad to try and connect 9 devices. Things like that. And you start to learn that way, and you build those skills and work with other people,
Mhm.
contribute where you can. And it's a steep learning curve at the beginning, but as you start to um, understand what you're doing and how to do it and build on that and have reliable results, even if it's just for you or you volunteer for like local nonprofits. Hey, listen, I'll do this. You want to have this event? I'll stream it for you for free. And you start doing these things and you start realizing, okay, these are the hurdles, these are the problems, and you start building solutions for those problems. Then you start to have a reliable service
Hmm.
that you can repeat this process over and over and over again, then you can start charging money for it, because now it's a reliable product that, or reliable service that other people can count on and will pay for. And then once you start doing that, then it just builds from there.
It's kind of like building the right mindset, isn't it? In a way,
Yeah.
sort of building
Yeah,
up
and
this
then
the
and then also
solution.
the hard work at the beginning will let you know if, is this something really that you want to keep going in, or is this too technical, or is there just too much stuff to deal with? Because, and there's different people. Some people are people persons. Hey, maybe you're more suited to marketing and sales than the technical end of live streaming. Because there's people for both. Somebody has to sell the service, somebody has to actually do the service.
Hmm. Totally, totally. Cool. Look, I know that you're a little bit pressed for time as well at the moment. So it's all good. It's been good chatting to you. I'm just saying thank you, really, mate, for popping in.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's been good talking with you, and I hope we have another conversation.
I'm sure we will, mate. I'm sure we will. See you soon.
All right, thank you.